we're going to discuss the evolution of intelligence and technology, starting from the Big Bang and getting up to the present. Parts 2 and 3 move on into the future. Now, starting from the Big Bang and getting to the present is a tall order. And the next slides, I hope, makes it clear how we do that. Here are a list of times going into the past down to 10 billion years. I'm going to call it 10 gigayears. And over on the right is a blank slate here where I'm going to put in one or two significant events in each time interval. So what happened before 10 gigayears? The Big Bang itself at 13.8 gigayears. But there was more things happening soon after the Big Bang. Stars were forming and exploding. And before they exploded, especially the big ones exploded fast, before they exploded, they made all the chemical elements in the periodic table, the things that planets are made out of and people are made out of and so on. And so that was a significant event, making the chemical elements. And now let's move to the next time interval between 1 gigayear and 10 gigayears. The sun and the earth formed, and life formed maybe less than 1 gigayear after the earth formed. Clearly, life is important to us, and but there's more in this particular time interval. There was life, and there were bacteria on Earth that figured out a way to harness the energy of the sun and make more bacteria. That process is called photosynthesis, and it produced, as a byproduct, it produced oxygen. And so there was a great upsurge in oxygen in the atmosphere and the oceans at about 2.3 gigayears before the present. And obviously, that's an important thing too. There is a picture of rust belts, oxidized iron from that period. Now, once the atmosphere had oxygen in it, that opened the way for animals to appear, and they did at 541 megayears. Now we're down to shorter time intervals. That's called the Cambrian explosion. And the Cambrian period produced all sorts of animal forms, including vertebrates like fish, who are our ancestors as well. Then land animals appeared, not very long after animals of any sort, maybe 400 million years. And soon after that, the dinosaurs ruled the earth, more or less. But in the next time interval, 65 million years, the dinosaurs went extinct. And that was probably due to a giant impact in the Yucatan Peninsula. At least the impact and the layer of dinosaur extinction in the sediments are pretty much the same. Now, what happened next? Evolution continued, and among the mammals who took the place of the dinosaurs in the food chain and position on the earth were the family of great apes. And we were, our species was one of those members of that family. And we were all evolving, but we seem to have, based on the fossil record, we seem to have split off from the chimpanzees, who are our closest relatives, about 6 million years ago. And we went our own way after that. But there were several species of the human tribe, and they started migrating, migrated out of Africa, perhaps about 1.5 million years before the present. And you can see some of the migration routes. They all crossed what is now the Suez Canal. The red are the Homo sapiens. That's basically us. And that came later, much later, in fact, maybe around 200,000 years ago. And there were already Neanderthals and this other kind, Homo erectus. They were already there in Europe and Asia. So we came later. One thing about the Homo sapiens is that we sort of found our present form, took over our present form and our present brain size about 300,000 years before the present. Now, there's not much left of those other guys, the Homo erectus, the Neanderthals. In fact, the only thing that's left of them at all is a few percent of our genes are actually from Neanderthals. So we mostly killed them off or outcompeted them, although we must have interbred somewhat with them. Okay, now, for a long time, these members of the Homo sapiens lived as hunter-gatherers, which means that they basically ate what was growing there and killed the animals that they could find. They didn't have fixed locations. And there are some hunter-gatherers who lived like that, who still live like that. They are represented by the black dots. But a major change occurred in this time interval between 10,000 and 100,000 years. People took up farming. And you may say farming's not a big deal, but it's a huge deal because you're, first of all, claiming a piece of land. Secondly, you're raising cattle, sheep, pigs. You're transforming the crops you grow, wheat, by selective breeding. And for that, you need an organized society. You have to hold on to your land. You perhaps have to form armies to protect it from competition. And you have to be organized, you have to have kings and perhaps even humans that you elevate to God status. So this was a major change in the way people lived, and it was a loss of freedom. And some people today think that it was a bad bargain, although it did feed a lot more people, and there was an increase in the population of Earth due to farming, basically. Now, what happened? Let's move on. What happened in the time interval between 1,000 and 10,000 years ago? People started metallurgy. The first metal used in warfare and other places was bronze. It was a Bronze Age, started at 1600 BC or even earlier. Then the Romans fought with iron weapons, and steel, which is an alloy of iron, came into Europe in the Middle Ages. But this is very important. Printing was invented in the Middle Ages, and that used lead as a metal for movable type. And of course, printing had an enormous effect on the way people communicated. You could print a big number of your document and send it all over to people all over the world. So that communication was big. Now, in that same time period, perhaps 1,000 years ago, navigation was invented. In other words, people figured out how to sail their ships all over the world. Some of those ships carried lots of guns, and some of those ships colonized the people they found who didn't have guns. In addition, people started using coal and later oil. The steam engine was invented in 1800, and this allowed people to travel across continents. And I don't need to say how significant these events were, but let's move on. In the last of this period, vaccination and sanitation were really figured out. Smallpox had been going on in Asia, but it was finally sold to Europeans in 1798. Now that picture is an enthusiastic bunch of school children and when the polio, lining up to get a polio shot. But the general treatment of new shots has been more negative than the polio vaccine. People also discovered in that same period, 1854, the importance of having good drinking water and the problems of having bad drinking water. Cholera was spread into cities by bad drinking water. Okay, now let's look at the last 100 years. We haven't talked about that. What has happened? Significant events in the evolution of science, of intelligence and technology. What's happened in the last? Well, some of these things, we don't know how significant they will turn out to be. But I would say nuclear weapons have great potential, most of it negative, if they are ever used again. Have been used once. But we don't know if we can prevent them from being used again. We came close in 1962. What else? There's blank spaces there on my chart. Artificial intelligence. The gains in the power of computers have been enormous, and we don't know how far they're going to go yet. And we've gone into space. We've discovered planets around other stars, thousands actually. And we don't know the potential of that, especially if there are civilizations out going around those stars on other planets. Okay, now that's the end of part one. Part two is going to explore the future possibilities. And there are lots of them. These are just two of them. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence might be successful and we might make contact with one of these civilizations. Or as the computers on Earth get more powerful, they might take over their own destiny. But just dial into part two and enjoy the fun.